Hi there, I'm Dr. Justin Chelette. I put together kind of a quick little webinar about children's vision that I'm going to share with y'all on LinkedIn. So feel free to spread this around. I'm just going to end up putting it right on LinkedIn so that way everybody has access to it. Shouldn't be longer than 25-30 minutes, but it's what we as developmental or behavioral optometrists, what we wish that the public knew about children's vision. So we're going to go over how when we say the word vision, we don't mean eyesight. Vision, there's a lot more to it than just whether or not a person can see with 20/20 clarity of sight. We're also going to go over what vision screenings are in the schools and why they leave a lot to be desired. And then we're going to talk about the practical stuff, the signs and symptoms that are very common in children with actual vision problems rather than just eyesight problems. So this will be stated forevermore. You're going to always hear me talking about this. Vision is more than eyesight. Vision is how the brain and the eyes work together as a system. There is input, there's processing, there's output, there is action, there's meaning. There are things that you're doing with vision. The picture on the left was done back in the 90s. It was kind of an attempt by scientists to map out all the different parts in the brain that are involved in vision. They had found that there was roughly 305 connections between all the parts of the brain upstairs that relate to the visual process. Nowadays we know it's a lot more, but the conservative estimate is roughly at least 60% of the brain is involved in vision in some way, shape, or form. The picture on the right, well, that's the classic Snellen chart. That's how people have tested eyesight since the 1860s was whenever Snellen created this chart. And quite simply, it just measures eyesight. It does nothing to do with how the brain and the eyes work together. So whenever I give this lecture in person, I will always ask the following question to the audience. But since y'all are all virtual and at your own leisure, I'll just tell you what usually happens. So I'll ask people, if I tell you, what does 2020 mean to you? How would you respond? You'll get a whole lot of variety of answers. Most people will say things like, oh, well, 2020 means having perfect vision, or that's normal, or that's what you want. And those are all okay answers, but they miss most of the story. So the concept of having 20/20 eyesight, well, quite simply, that just means, can you see small font size? That's all that means. When you take apart the 20 and the 20, that first 20 means that you're looking at a chart situated 20 feet away. That second 20 means that it's the certain font size on that piece of paper or on that piece of plastic. In this case, the 20/20 letters are the ones right above the red line. It's just a font size that you're able to see from a certain distance away. It tells you nothing about how your brain works, about how your eyes work together, about how your eyes track, about how your eyes focus, about how you process the letters, about how you even decode if you know what letters they are. It tells you nothing more than just if the eyes are healthy. So I don't know where my face went off to, but on this slide, when we talk about what is vision doing with reading, well, first off, the eyes have to move across a page. I mean, think about it. How do you know what words you're looking at? Your eyes have to jump from word to word. Whenever we talk about reading eye movements, there's multiple different things that occur. So whenever our eyes jump from place to place, that's called a saccade. And then our eyes stop in order to look at whatever word our eyes land on. Whenever we stop and look, that's called a fixation. And it's only during fixations that we actually see what's written on a page. Every time we jump our eyes around, we don't see anything whenever we do make that jump movement. And then a regression, well, that's a backwards eye movement. So if you go from right to left, whenever you're supposed to be reading left to right, well, that's what we call a regression. So back in the day, there was an organization called COVD, and they've since changed their name, but what happened was they created this list of at least 17 different visual skills that are necessary for children in order to read and learn well and read and learn effectively in school. And this whole list is fantastic because it goes to show you there's a lot that happens in school when it comes to vision. I mean, you got to point your eyes around. You got to maintain your eye alignment. You got to maintain your focus. You got to shift your focus back and forth. There's all these different skills that if any of them are underdeveloped or if any of them are not working well, well, then they're all going to be affected to a certain degree. And what happens in that case, that's a kid that can't read well. That's a kid that can't learn well whenever their vision is not supporting their performance. And I highlight this slide because I'm going to say it probably a few more times before I finish this. Clarity of eyesight is only one of at least 17 different visual skills. So kids need all of these evaluated in order to know if vision is affecting their school performance. If you're only looking at the 10th one on the list, the central visual acuity, if you're only assessing that one, then you have no ability to say, you have no confidence, and you have no right to say that a child's vision is not affecting their schooling if you've only looked at that. Until everything's been looked at, you can't rule out vision as affecting a child's school. You just can't. Now, since I'm in the habit of trying to break conventional wisdom, I will give credit to this. So this is a picture that was designed by a lady named Toni Bristol. And the way that you look at this slide is, think back to when you were in, let's say, first grade or whatever, when you learned that the eye is like a camera. The eye has a lens, it makes an inverted image inside the eyeball, and then the image has to get created, right? Nothing really happens inside the eye. Well, just like the old film cameras from back in the day, you took a snapshot, the image gets burned onto film, and then you had to physically take that film elsewhere to a photo processing station or a photo processing store, and then that was how the images got created. So the eye is like a camera in the sense that it gathers the information, but the processing has to occur elsewhere. Nothing gets processed inside the eye. And where does all the processing happen? Well, it happens in the brain. So the eyes do not see. The brain is what sees. Vision happens in the brain. The eyes are just the gatherers of information that the brain then turns into the picture. Now, to be fair, some children don't see with 20/20 eyesight, and your regular optometrist, your primary care optometrist, and your general ophthalmologist, they can easily catch those conditions. When a child has myopia or nearsightedness, everything is blurry. You put a pair of glasses on, everything crispens up and it becomes clear. And then, of course, if you have a health issue like a cataract or retinal dystrophy, of course, that's going to affect the quality of how you see. But thankfully, those are very rare. It's very few kids that have those problems. Now, where developmental optometrist comes in, we're the ones who find the things that aren't easy. When it's not a simple case of nearsightedness, when it's not a simple eye health problem, that's where we have to then say, well, the child can't see with 20/20 because they overfocus for far. They need to learn how to relax their focus. They need to learn how to not have a chronic cramp in their eye muscles, because that's why they can't see, for example. Or if they have a tracking problem, well, yeah, they can't read the small stuff because they can't find it. They don't know how to put their eyes on that small little area. It's not that they can't see, it's that they have a functional disorder that inhibits them from seeing that at this moment in time. So there are a lot of reasons why a kid couldn't see with 20/20 eyesight if they were to, let's say, fail the screening or whatever. And again, I want to really emphasize that vision is more than eyesight. Vision is more than the eyes. Let's take a few seconds to look at this. What you'll notice is that there is not a single word on there. There are not language on there. It's letters, numbers, and keyboard characters. But thanks to how your brain is able to process information, thanks to how your brain is able to decode stuff that it sees, we can turn that into a comprehensible paragraph. And this is another example of how vision works. I'm going to pause. I'm not going to say a thing for a few moments. I want you all to look at this. Think about, what is this image? This is crazy. Why is he showing us this? now if you're ready for the big reveal, it's a cow. So the picture on the left shows if the whole cow were fully formed. The picture on the right shows, well, that's the outline of the cow's head. Now I show you this because I want you to see how it's a cow, and now let's go back and let me show you that it's a cow. So now can you see that this is a cow? And I'm showing you this experiment or this illusion because vision works in a very remarkable way. When you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know how to identify something. But once you're able to have that aha moment of, oh, that's what that is, now your brain has triggered itself. Now your brain has changed. Now you can tell that this is a cow, and you can see it, and you're not going to lose the image. It's burned into your visual memory. And so this little picture here, these are examples of how children can still see with 20/20 eyesight, but have difficulties with their vision that makes what they see confusing. So the top picture is, of course, the regular line. And the second picture, well, that could be a ghosted image from either uncompensated astigmatism or an eye teaming abnormality. You can still see it. You can still identify and decode it. But imagine how slow it would take you, or how long it would take you to read if that's how you saw. The third line, well, that's a very classic example of a kid that can't track very well. They just don't know the order of where things are supposed to go or where they're supposed to look at. Now, since the brain can piece together whole concepts from just parts of it, we can still read that just fine. Of course, it will take us a little bit longer because we have to decode it and accurately ensure that the context is making sense. But that is how some kids report what they see, because their eyes jump all over the page or jump all over the line as they're trying to look at something like that. Again, there's nothing wrong with the clarity. And then the bottom one, although my head's in the way, it's got very poor spacing. And children with spatial awareness issues, children with depth perception problems, they often struggle with stuff like that. This is a very cool thing that found from the University of Waterloo. They found children with diagnosed official reading disorders. Very few of them have eyesight problems. Although my head's in the way, it says no refractive error was found in 81% of the children. So that means that in these kids, the vision problems exacerbating their reading disorders are not eyesight mediated. They're problems of focusing, they're problems of visual attention, they're problems of eye movements, they're problems of eye teaming, they're problems of visual perception. They're not eyesight related, but they're still vision problems making reading harder. So this is another picture that's generated by Tony Bristol. This is what it's like to experience doubled vision when reading. It started off clean, right? You looked at it, you could read it, but the longer that you try to read it, things get funny. And this is exactly how it is for children who struggle with their eye alignment whenever they're reading, who struggle with their focus when they're reading. It's not that they can't see, it's that their visual skills are failing them. Their visual skills are being very poorly supported. They're fatiguing quickly, they can't keep their eyes aligned to the page, and then how they see suffers because of what's happening to them. Now, specific to Texas, let's get into why the school screenings are terrible. So here in Texas, we use what's called the Form M60. And this is what it looks like. This is what we optometrists have to fill out if you're doing a school screening, or school nurses have to fill this out. And look at what's on the left-hand side. This is all that's tested. Distance acuity. Then if they use a photo screener like the Plus Optics or the Welch-Allen spot screener. And then there are some optional things. It's optional for a school nurse to learn how to do a Hirschberg corneal light reflex. It's optional for a school nurse to learn how to do a cover test. If something like that's optional, then they shouldn't be doing the screening, because 5% of children will be caught by poor distance acuity. 95% of children will pass this screening easily and still be found to have problems. It makes no sense whatsoever why they're not even looking at near acuity. Because after all, what do we read nowadays? Our phones, our computers, our Chromebooks, papers. Rarely do we see anything small far away in a classroom. And the kid who can't see the thing far away, well, they're going to know about that very easily because it's super obvious. All the actual vision problems that affect a kid's ability to read and learn in school will never get looked at because the school screenings don't account for it. It's really bad. And so now the meat of the matter. How can you tell if there is a vision problem affecting this kid's performance? Well, in the next 3 slides, I have the top 5 symptoms for all of these things, and they're so common. Believe me, they are so common. I hear this stuff on a daily basis. So all you have to do is start remembering that these are the problems. So a kid that has a focusing problem, such as an accommodative disorder, well, what happens often is that they'll look at something up close, their eye muscles will contract, they'll cramp their eye muscles. Then when they try to look far away, they can't relax their eye muscles. So that's a kid that they pass a screening, but they still can't see the board in class. They have to be moved up to the front of the classroom because they can't see, but they always pass the test. That's a kid that gets headaches when they're reading. That's a kid that avoids doing near work because it's uncomfortable for them whenever their quality of sight gets blurry, gets uncomfortable, and they start getting a headache. They have a very poor attention span. They just can't stick with tasks long. I mean, who could if after 20, 30 seconds, if after 2 to 5 minutes, everything you're seeing is blurry, who's going to stick with anything that they do? Nobody. And they're going to start off strong. They're going to have a good stamina until their first break. And then every subsequent break after, it's going to be happening faster and faster because they just can't stick with the thing for longer and longer periods of time. Tracking problems. These I see all the time. Skipping words, skipping lines, losing place easily when you're reading or copying. Classic. Skipping lines and skipping words, rereading lines, using your finger to keep your place, that's not dyslexia. That's a vision problem. It's an oculomotor inefficiency. And the kid that's always been better at hearing than reading or listening than reading, that's a kid that likely has a tracking issue. Problems of eye teaming. Well, the kid that falls asleep when they're reading. Ding, ding, ding. That's a sign that the kid just can't keep their gaze on the page and it just knocks them out. It's too much effort. If they cover or if they close one eye whenever they're reading or working, that's abnormal. Why are they doing that? They're likely getting double vision whenever they're reading. A kid who starts tilting his head as he's reading or hunches over, gets real close to the page, has these real bad postural adaptations. Well, they're often doing that in an effort to get rid of the discomfort, in an effort to move their eyes to a different position of gaze to make it more doable for them. And of course, a kid that rubs their eyes after reading or that bumps into everything is super clumsy, they often can't judge distance as well. They often have poor depth perception, poor spatial awareness. So yeah, classic signs for an eye teaming disorder. So what do you do? Me having said that 20/20 eyesight's not the end of the story, me having said that there's so much more to reading and learning than just having 20/20 eyesight, me having said that vision is a really intricate and comprehensive and complex phenomenon, what do you do knowing that now? Well, what you have to do is you have to find a developmental optometrist in your area. They're pretty easy to find. You just kind of get on Google near you and type in vision therapy near me, and you can often tease apart who the developmental optometrists are once you start looking at their websites. Children with these problems need to see developmental optometrists, pediatric ophthalmologists, general care optometrists. They're not going to diagnose functional vision issues that affect the kid's reading and learning abilities. They're just not going to. So the kid's always going to be left wondering, what more could there be once their eyesight is deemed okay, but they're still struggling? So you can't tell a parent that the kid needs an eye exam because they're going to take them to their nearest optometrist. Vision Works is open on the weekend, so they're going to roll there. And the kid's going to have great distance clarity of sight. They're going to be well rested. Their eyes are going to be healthy, so they're not going to find the problem. And once you're told by a doctor nothing is wrong, but the kid's still struggling, what happens? I mean, that's a question I don't have an answer for. All I can say is the kid's going to still struggle, self-esteem is going to eventually tank, and everything's going to be hard. They need to see developmental optometrists, the children with these problems. Again, I said I'm going to say it again. Central clarity of sight, distance quality of eyesight is not enough to support a child that's struggling in school. Knowing it is important, but it's not the end of the story. It's only the beginning of the story whenever we're talking about how does a child operate when they're reading or learning. So what else can you do? Well, if you really want to help somebody out, you can have these symptom checklists. Now, to be fair, if you do the QR code, this symptom checklist has my material on it, but these are the type of questions that we ask. These are great for teasing out if there's a functional vision component associated with the child's poor school, sports, etc. performance. Using weighted symptom surveys are awesome because the more points the person gets, the higher the chance that there's a functional vision deficit going on. So I'm going to wrap up this webinar here. I hope this was helpful for anybody that happens to stumble across it. Here's my contact information for my office here in Houston, Texas. If anybody's in the area and wants to chat about people that they've seen or wants to come by and learn more about functional vision, learn more how developmental optometry can help children in the area. Or hey, if you want to learn more about what can I do for you, how I can help you find developmental optometrists in your area, or if you want to learn more, collaborate, whatever, hey, here's the information. Use it or lose it, and hope you guys enjoyed this.